These games tried to capitalize on Grand Theft Auto's success by ripping off the stuff that makes it such a compelling franchise, only to fail miserably. Buckle your seatbelts because this is going to be a seriously bumpy ride. Right to Hell Retribution isn't an open-world crime simulator, but it was supposed to be. When Deep Silver announced the game in 2008, Right to Hell was going to be a lurid trip through the 1960s seedy underbelly. As a member of a Hell's Angels-like motorcycle gang, you'd cruise across the American West on your bike, slowly rising through the ranks until ultimately becoming top dog. 5 years later, Right to Hell Retribution arrived, and it was not that. At some point during production, the game's developers must have realized they'd been overly ambitious, so they clumsily reconfigured everything they'd built into something else. Unfortunately, that something else turns out to be one of the worst video games ever made. Right to Hell Retribution isn't just glitchy, it barely works at all. And when it does work, it's no fun to play. Oh, and every time you complete a quest that's been given by a woman, she rewards you with sex. But the characters never take off their clothes, making Right to Hell both incredibly sexist and unintentionally hilarious. It's not even so bad it's good, it's just bad.
You look like you need some oiling. Wanna get greasy?
Business before pleasure, sweetheart.
True crime Streets of LA hasn't aged well, but when it first came out in 2003, it was seen as the first open-world game to really rival Grand Theft Auto. True Crime wasn't a straight-up GTA clone. Instead of playing the bad guy, True Crime puts you in the shoes of a cop. It has a branching storyline that changes when you succeed or fail at a mission, making it feel like your actions really matter. Instead of a fictional city, True Crime took place in a recreation of Los Angeles, and it included voice work by the likes of Christopher Walken, Gary Oldman, Michelle Rodriguez, and Michael Madsen. That was enough to earn True Crime a sequel, and that's when the trouble started. True Crime New York City didn't bring any new ideas to the table, and it didn't implement the old ones particularly well either.
Crime has been on the rise all over the city, so please, do me a favor. Get out there and collar me some perps, okay?
Yes, thank you.
By 2005, True Crime's basic good cop, bad cop morality system felt dated, and the city lacked New York's grimy charm. Meanwhile, reviewers complained that the game felt rushed and that its numerous glitches made it borderline unplayable. The game effectively killed the True Crime franchise for good. True Crime New York City only moved about 72,000 copies, less than a third of what True Crime Streets of LA sold in its first 2 weeks on the market. Unsurprisingly, plans for a sequel were quickly shelved. Activision briefly tried to revive the brand in 2009, but ended up selling True Crime Hong Kong to Square Enix. The game was ultimately released to Sleeping Dogs, presumably to set it apart from the botched True Crime franchise. Let's say you want to play Grand Theft Auto on the go, so you head over to the iOS App Store to see what's available, and then you stumble upon the Gangsta Auto Thief series. Sure, something seems a little fishy right out of the gate, but the art looks like something you might find on a Grand Theft Auto game. Maybe? Meanwhile, the game description sounds about right. Just take a look at this plot synopsis from Gangsta Auto Thief: Reckless Gangster City Hustle. Welcome to the city of crime, explosions, tanks, helicopters, undercover police, and a whole lot of mayhem. It sounds familiar, but don't be fooled. Gangsta Auto Thief is decidedly not a Grand Theft Auto game. In fact, it's not an open-world crime game at all. It's a crappy driving game that was clearly designed to bilk money from suckers by ripping off Rockstar's signature aesthetic. You're not a sucker, are you? Yeah, we didn't think so.
Everything I thought about you was wrong.
Amazingly, the worst thing about Driver 3 isn't its promotional title, which, how do you even pronounce that? Driv 3? Driv 3R? The game's biggest downfall is how it doesn't seem to understand what made the Driver series special in the first place. The first two Driver games take place in open worlds, but they aren't really rip-offs of Grand Theft Auto. In fact, the original Driver debuted in 1999, a full 2 years before Grand Theft Auto 3 took the series into 3D. Driver and Driver 2 are racing games full of high-speed car chases that look straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster. These games are fast, chaotic, and fun. By contrast, Driver 3 tries to move the franchise into full-on Grand Theft Auto territory by making you get out of the car and fight, and that's where things fall apart. Sure, Driver 2 had some on-foot sequences, but they weren't combat-based. In Driver 3, the shootouts rely on trial and error, not on any real skill on the part of the player, and the on-foot enemies are dumb as rocks. When you're behind the wheel, Driver 3 works. When you do anything else, it's a disaster.
He's here, so it's on.
If people want to play Grand Theft Auto, they'll play Grand Theft Auto. And if they pick up a Driver game, they want to play Driver. Ubisoft ultimately got the series back on track with Driver San Francisco, which returned players to their rightful place behind the wheel. But after Driver 3, it looks like the franchise was in real trouble. It's a miracle that it ever recovered at all. Sometimes a game doesn't have to be bad to fail. Sometimes a perfectly fine title comes and goes without much of an impact, or making much money. For example, raise your hand if you remember Total Overdose, A Gunslinger's Tale in Mexico. Anyone? Yeah, that's what we thought. With a 71 Metacritic score, Total Overdose won't be turning any heads.
So, this is the man I keep hearing about, huh? I will shake your hand, but mine is covered in blood.
I'm a vegetarian.
Nevertheless, reviews for the game indicate that it's quite a serviceable romp, if not particularly noteworthy or groundbreaking. IGN compares Total Overdose's gunplay to Max Payne, which is really quite the compliment. GameSpy says that the game feels unfinished, but allows that. Even the most jaded hack can admit that some of this game is incredibly entertaining. In fact, it's remarkably hard to find any information about Total Overdose online. One thing that we do know, Total Overdose never got a sequel because Eidos, the first game's publisher, refused to fund it. That certainly doesn't speak well of Total Overdose's financial performance, and that's too bad. By all accounts, the game was perfectly fine. The problem is, nobody ever played it. Grand Theft Auto went to London twice. In 1999, Rockstar Games released Grand Theft Auto London 1969, an expansion pack for the very first Grand Theft Auto game, and then followed that up later that year with London 1961. An expansion pack for the first expansion pack. Ever since then, fans have argued that the next Grand Theft Auto should be set in London, or a fictional location based on London. But there's already a GTA-like game that's set on the other side of the pond. It's called, appropriately enough, Gangs of London, and it came out on the PlayStation Portable in 2006. If you look at what the game has to offer, it seems like a reasonable substitute. Gangs of London follows in the footsteps of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, with plenty of gang-based warfare, but the enemy AI isn't very good. Plus, the missions get repetitive fast. Worst of all, Gangs of London doesn't do anything special with the setting. Its take on the Big Smoke is just another generic city in a genre full of them. For years, fans of open-world crime games have wanted a title that takes full advantage of London's seedy charms. Well, they're still waiting for that game. There's good, there's bad, and then there's Crime Life Gang Wars, a game that manages to be both offensive and derivative at the same time.
Welcome, Trey. I'm glad you made it. Really, I am. Glad you saved me the trouble of hunting you down.
Not that there aren't a few interesting ideas here. While Grand Theft Auto characters tend to be lone wolves, Crime Life is all about gang warfare, with numerous combatants entering the fray. And in terms of combat, Crime Life more or less shies away from firearms, instead favoring melee combat that resembles good old-fashioned arcade beat-em-ups. Unfortunately, the game has a lot of problems. For one thing, the actual fighting is clunky and hard to control. Plus, the characters are so generic, it's easy to forget which gangster you're controlling. Meanwhile, the game wants to be Grand Theft Auto San Andreas so badly it hurts. The gang is called the Outlaws. Supporting characters have names like Corrupt and Big Dog. Oh, and you live in a neighborhood that's literally called just the Hood. Basically, none of it works. Critics did praise Crime Life's soundtrack, which features music from the hip-hop group D12, but they didn't have many good things to say about the game itself. In other words, you can find the best parts of Crime Life on Spotify, except maybe this part.
I can smell your fear, Trey. I can feel your heartbeat.
On paper, APB All Points Bulletin sounds fine. Players roam around the fictional metropolis of Samparo, either as a member of the Enforcers, that is the cops, or the criminals. APB has a strong Grand Theft Auto link behind the scenes too. It was directed by David Jones, who created Grand Theft Auto. So far, so good. But then APB came out, and the reviews weren't kind. Critics complained that the game felt unfinished, and the core shooting and driving systems felt sloppy and repetitive, and that Samparo streets all looked the same. Just a couple months after APB launched, developer Real Time Worlds went out of business, taking the game's online servers with it. Eventually, Korean games company K2 Network bought the rights to APB and relaunched it as a free-to-play title, but players soon complained that it was more pay-to-win.
Change is coming. Now prove you're good enough to be part of it.
Remarkably, APB Reloaded is still around, although it's full of cheaters, toxic community members, and dated gameplay. Even some of its most dedicated players have called it garbage. In 2018, APB was sold to publisher Little Orbit, so improvements could be on the way, but given APB's history, we're not getting our hopes up. Mobile marketplaces are full of low-budget GTA clones, none of which seem to work quite right. Many of these games have close but not quite right names like Grab the Auto 5. Usually, the graphics clearly struggle to display anything that's more than 20 feet in front of the player, and we'll never know if the combat is any good because the camera system in these games make any kind of gunplay all but impossible. As the AV Club puts it, the games, not surprisingly, are marked by wonky cameras, wonkier controls, long loading times, primeval graphics, and any semblance of purpose. And here's another thing, these games never seem to make their goals and missions clear, so what's the point? Anyway, someone's got to be playing these games, because there's certainly no shortage of them. Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather and the Mario Puzo novel that it's based on laid the foundation for every organized crime yarn that followed, including Grand Theft Auto. That's why it's not too surprising that someone made a Godfather video game. The Godfather the game wasn't bad, even though the 2006 title failed to capture the tone of its source material. However, the same can't be said about the sequel, whereas The Godfather Part II is one of the rare film sequels that's even better than the first one. Lightning doesn't strike twice with The Godfather 2. The game's biggest crime? It's so darn boring, and its glitch-ridden environments all look the same. Plus, the missions get real repetitive real fast. Critics reacted accordingly, as customers bought less than 250,000 copies of the game. That's not much for a name as big as The Godfather, and EA sent any plans for a sequel to sleep with the fishes. Given that the next film in this series is a notoriously awful The Godfather Part III, that's probably a blessing.
You hate me.
No, I don't hate you. I dread you.
Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more SVG videos about your favorite games are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.